When I was a young girl, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. He said, girl, when you grow up, would you be the savior of the broken, the beaten and the damned? He said, will you defeat them, your demons and all the non-believers, the plans that I had made? Because one day I'll leave you a phantom to lead you in the summer to join the Black Parade.
Okay. So, in case you didn't know, but I'm pretty sure most of you know, my name is Ravven, and I am the founder of Curious Corvid Publishing, and I'm also the author of a couple books. I have 2 poetry collections out currently, and I have my first novel, The Sentimental Dead, arriving in October, and I'm really, really excited about it. But we're here tonight to talk about poetry, specifically my poetry and the collection that just dropped May 3rd. And I'm really excited to talk about it and show you all of the things. So the first thing I want to show you is, so whenever I talk about my poetry books, my first one is called I Am Ravven. And I always talk about it, and I talk about how different it looked in the beginning as opposed to where it is now. So, and I never have the book with me to show the difference. All right, so this is my first collection, I Am Ravven. It's a beautiful white book. It's shiny. A beautiful crow on the front. There's the back with my author details and my raving reviews and the book description. So that's what it looks like. But it didn't look like that in the beginning. In the beginning, it was orange. And this is the book. So this is an old book, so yeah, I'm just going to show you the inside of it too, so we can kind of get it. Okay, so this one's all writ up. So this one was actually my personal book that I used to do edits in. So you can see it's got like scribble marks and everything. And I love this book, and it's important to me just so I can look back and see like all of the revisions and the hard work that I put into making this book at the time. So like here is one of the first poems. This one's called Time is Relative, and it is not actually in this one. So when I went through and wrote this book, I don't remember how many poems were actually in here, but when I went through and I redid it and I turned it into this, there was actually quite a few poems that I left out. Either I felt that I didn't identify with them anymore, or they had kind of like, in my opinion, reached like an expiration date. So in Time is Relative, I talk about my age very specifically. And I was no longer that age when I put this book out. And so it kind of felt to me like it didn't make sense. So, and we put the 2 side by side. There's even a size difference. This is smaller, but it actually has more poems in it than this one does. So this one has 11 new poems in it that isn't in the orange one. When I will show you just so you can see the difference. So this is the difference of the style as opposed to the other ones. I still used the same font, but I formatted it differently and I made it smaller. But there's 11 extra poems in here. So there's like, I think there's 50 poems in here altogether. So this was my first one that came out last year. I republished it through Curious Corvid Publishing. And then this is the one that just came out on the 3rd. And it's beautiful and I love it so much. There's the back. This one's a thick one. So in comparison to my first one, I put a lot of time and effort into this book. Not that I didn't with the first one at all, but the first one was already kind of like a whole thing. So when I redid it, it was a little bit easier. But I do have something to share with you that I've never shown on camera before or really talked about. So The Cry of the Ravven is actually a redo of another book that I had called Scars on Our Skin. And it looks like this. It was purple. I have a thing for purple. So this was the front and this was the back. So it has, this band is on it because this was actually a proof copy that I had gotten. So that's what it looked like. That's me. And then the inside. So the same deal with this one. This one's, as you can see, it's about the same size as the original one was. But when I redid it, I found I had grown and I had changed a lot. And both my person and my writing style was just not the same. And there was poems in here that they were okay, but they really weren't my best work. So I reworked pretty much all of the poems that were in that book and added new ones. And now there's like 80, 85, something like that in this one. So quite a difference from the last time. But I'm really proud of how it turned out. So there's a lot of symbolism. I love symbolism. I think it's really important when you're establishing your own lore and you're trying to like create your, basically tell your story of who you are. So I'm going to tell you things that probably you don't care about, but I care about because I wrote the books. So the first book, I Am Ravven, is about leaving a bad situation and just kind of recognizing that it was bad and taking that leap of faith, lying away, to something better. So you have this crow in like a clear sky. So it looks white on camera, but it's actually a really light blue. And it just seems, it's just very hopeful and like positive. And then you have the second book, which is black. And you have this raven here who's cawing or crying. And we have this sun that looks like it's like basically exploding, burning up. And I really wanted that metaphor and that contrast because this book is all about like leaving bad situations and deciding you want something better. And then this one is about doing the work to actually make that happen. And when you are healing from shit and really bad stuff, it is hard to do and it takes a lot out of you. And healing is not really rainbows and butterflies and all is well and good. Healing is being in the trenches. It's being at war. It's destructive. It's apocalyptic. Not that it isn't worth it, but I think we glaze over that fact too much because at the end of the day, making the choice to heal and making the choice to pursue something positive and better is the harder option. It is always the harder option because it's much easier to just sit there and continue the way that you are. So that's what this book is about. And I really wanted that to come across, as well as this book follows the story of the White Raven. So I'm going to read to you in just a second my own it's like my own retelling of the lore of the White Raven. So the lore goes different ways depending on what culture you're reading it from. But for me, I really identified with it because it's the story of this raven living in darkness, and she goes to steal the sun. And when she steals the sun and brings it back to Earth, she ends up getting burned because of it. And she changes and she comes out completely different and not the same that she was beforehand. So she did it anyway because she knew that she needed that in order to survive. So I think you can see why I might identify with that a little bit. And it is my namesake after all. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to dive into The Cry of the Ravven, and I'm going to read you some pieces from it and talk about it a little bit and answer any questions if anyone has questions, but kind of just hang out with you guys. So I'm really passionate about poetry. It's what I consider to be my soul language. I enjoy writing fiction and short stories and novels, obviously. But at the end of the day, I feel that poetry has such a unique ability to express emotion in a way that novels or short fiction can't. I don't know. That's just me personally. All right. So first of all, I want to show you how pretty the inside of the book is too. So Is the inside of the book. And talking of intention, this font, I wanted something that was more gothic because that's my aesthetic. But this font is actually called Just Imagine. And I was so excited when I came across it. And I immediately, without even any hesitation, I was like, that's the one for my book, because that's the theme of the book, is imagining a better life. Intention, secret messages. Okay. So here's our first piece. The Legend of the White Raven, a retelling. Once upon a time, oh, so many a moon ago, the world was bathed in a darkness unlike any that we know. You may think we know of shadows, of darkness and of night, but the world was once cold and desolate, ruled by an endless night. There was no thriving and no living, just existing to survive. And monsters roamed this nightfall, slaying all who were alive. Growls danced with darkness, pointed teeth flayed tender flesh. In this world there was no safety, as the smell of blood hung fresh. But not all the creatures were savage. Some were wise and even kind, and they longed for warmth and for sunlight. But over time, even they fell resigned. Hush now and listen, my darlings, and I will tell you how our world came to be. The legend of the White Raven and how she altered our own destiny. What the hell happened there? Okay, I don't know what happened there. My computer just clicked off for some reason. And how she altered our own destiny. Without sun, there would not be plant life. So in this world, there was no lush green. Only sparse, thorny shrubs grew in the ground. No moss, no flowers, no trees. The birds of this world lived in mountains, in high peaks coated in snow. And among these flocks lived the white ravens, not the black ones that we now know. They were regarded as guardians, a flash of white in the night. They scouted the monsters most savage and helped lesser creatures survive. But even their numbers grew fewer as the coldness crept into their bones. The monsters were growing much bolder, invading the high peaks, their home. One day every year, the brutes cowered when strange light pierced through the clouds. Warmth and light flooded the atmosphere, and for this one day, no fear was allowed. One white raven dreamed of the sunlight, of endless days filled with hope, where all could live in their freedom, where all could be safe in their home. The others forbade her from dreaming. We are destined a duty to fill. You can't save the world from the nightfall, for this is the way and the will. So she soared in the night, hunting monsters, a guardian in this bleak place, but still she would dream of a sunlit world where freedom reflected her face. High, one day she soared past the mountains, high into the atmosphere. She broke past the clouds and the gloominess. She felt freedom and safety, no fear. And there in the sky, shining brightly, glowed a radiant beacon of hope. But it sat too far off in the distance to reach the white raven's home. Quite suddenly, a crazy thought struck her. What if they flew to this sun, grabbed hold of the rays with their talons, and render their nightfall undone? With a heart beating wild and hopeful, she dove down back to her kin. And she told them the story of stealing the sun and how she thought they should begin. Silence, echoed the elders. Have you yet to learn your own place? This is a last strike. Be gone from our flock. You are an outcast and a disgrace. And now you may know, my darlings, why flocks of ravens are called an unkindness, forsaking their own and living in fear, content with the dark and the violence. Abandoned by family and left to her own, the white raven flew back to the sun, and she cried for the loss of her kin and home, and for the darkness and all that was done. And when the tears dried from her clear eyes, she straightened her feathers and head. I'll be the one to move the sun and the sky, for it is better than accepting the dead. Faster than whispers caught in the wind, our white raven flew towards the light. She would not give in to the heartache within. She would not give in to the night. Wrapping her talons around flaming rays, she cried out as they burned to her bones, her wingtips on fire as she started her flight to bring hope back to her home. Bearing a light is a burden, as all of us know, but the white raven, she would not stop. Even as feathers blackened across her back and her heart flickered between on and off. Her kin heard her cries and soared to the sky to see a flaming blackbird bearing the sun. In silence and awe, they bore witness to her and the miracle of all she had done. They flew to her side and aided her feet as the clouds parted and the darkness gave way, and the earth was flooded in a gentle light with the birth of the first day. The monsters and creatures scurried away, deep into caverns and caves, as far from the light as they could hide, invading the earth and the waves. The ravens, once guardians of ancient night, now flew mottled in black from the burns. Our white raven, well, she suffered the most. She knew her white feathers would not return. The earth heaved a sigh, warmed by the light, and felt the loss echo deep in her heart. But our raven knew her job was not done. A new order is what she would start. Behold the mighty black ravens, guardians of wisdom and time. They would go on to serve kingdoms and gods, for it is courage that runs in their line. But once in a while, and somewhat rare, a white raven is born to an unkindness, a beautiful symbol of sacrifice left behind to forever remind us. May we all be as brave as the white raven who brought us the sun and the light, who refused to accept the way that things were and chose hope over fear of the night. So that is that's my take on the mythology of the white raven who stole the sun in the sky and brought us the first day. It is a really good story, in my opinion, and I highly encourage you to check it out and see the different, there's, depending on which culture you read it from, it goes different ways. There are some that talk about the raven stealing the sun, and it's more of a mischievous kind of trickster crow that does it. But I'm quite partial to the white raven mythology myself. So that's the theme for my book. So the book is set up into different sections based on that. So the first section is called The Wound, and then we have the cry, the bleed, the death, the transformation, and then the sun. And so when we talk about grief, there's like different stages to grief. And I kind of feel like there's the same that's applicable to healing as well. There's different stages to healing and how you work through it. And so I wanted to highlight that through my book and talk about different kinds of healing. And also that sometimes healing is not really like, you don't really realize it's happened until you find yourself in a moment where you would be like way more upset or way more put out than what you actually are in the moment, if that makes sense. So it was really, really important to me when I put this book together that it was honest and straightforward in its portrayal of what it looks like to actually work on yourself and do the work to make yourself a better person. So obviously my book is not for the faint of heart. Neither one of them are. And I find that people usually tell me when they've read my book that it brings up a lot of emotional, not necessarily like trauma per se, but it has made people feel like one of two ways. One being that it gave them time to reflect on where they'd come from. And so it made them feel grateful that they were not in that kind of emotional spot anymore. And for other people, it kind of gave them validation because they were currently there, or they were currently working through some trauma, and it helped vocalize it in a way that they didn't have before. So so what I'm trying to say is, this is not exactly like light reading. This isn't the kind of thing that you would pick up for like easy reading before you went to bed. This is kind of like, it will hopefully make you stop and think and consider where you are, and hopefully give a voice to people who have also been through the same kinds of trauma. So I've been through just about everything. I went through a lot of really severe childhood trauma, and I'm laughing right now because I have an inappropriate response to talking about difficult subjects. So you'll find me doing this a lot because it's uncomfortable for me to talk about, but the only way I know how to talk about it is to make jokes about it or to laugh. Don't worry about it. I'm working on it in therapy. So, but yeah, so I went through a lot of childhood trauma, and all kinds of different abuse and assault, and it went into my adulthood for a little bit as well. So I have some of that mixed in. And the reason why I started writing is because it gave me a safe place to talk about what I was experiencing. And one of the most beautiful things about poetry is that you can write about trauma in a metaphorical sense, in a softened sense. So not only is it easier for you, the reader, to digest, but it's easier for me, the writer, to write, because I can kind of address it in a softer and more metaphorical manner. So it's hard for me to pick pieces out of this collection to do for readings because I don't want to depress everyone who's listening. But there is one I'm going to read today, and it's called 4-Letter Words. And I'm choosing to read this piece. I've never read this one out loud before. And it is a heavy topic. So fair warning, it does mention sexual assault. But the reason why I am choosing to read this one today is because of some comments that I have seen as of late that deal with sexual assault, specifically rape of women and minors, and how flippant the conversations can be about it, and how negatively that can affect people who have experienced it. It's something I'm really passionate about. I think that if you haven't experienced it, then you don't have the same perspective or understanding of how detrimental, flippant, or disregarding conversations can be. And so that's why I wrote it. So this one's called 4-Letter Words. I've spent the last 4 days consumed by a 4-letter word, as if the brand on my body hurt it and burned, and I have been lost in a darkness I did not deserve to revisit. A frightened child, abused, beaten, locked in a closet. I write in riddles and secrets that hedge around darkness, and it burns me alive as my grief smolders boundless. But I saw a comment that seared me to my soul, and I wonder, is this what the world thinks it knows? Rape isn't akin to death. Sounds to me a bit dramatic. So flippant, so easy to just disregard it. And this is the word scarred on my skin that destroys me alive without and within. In what way could rape never be anything but death, as we are smothered and silenced, holding our breath? It's a death and passing of what could have been, a death of the safety that should have been, a death of living replaced with survival, a death of peace, of hope, of revival, because who we were before cannot ever return, and we are left in the aftermath, unmarked graves, ashen urns. Tell me that I'm being dramatic, that I got to live through it. But I have to live with this sin, and you don't. You say you understand, but I know that you won't. This disgraceful commentary diminishes rape and the terrible things born of that place. We must acknowledge the destruction and pain, that rape is an action, not just a name. It should be treated as death, a loss of sweet life. I may be living, but I'm not quite right. You don't just come back once it happens to you. It takes courage and strength to start over brand new, to say goodbye to who you were and what could have been, like safety, security, trust in women and men. And I just want you to know, if it's happened to you, you're not alone, and I'm walking with you. And I acknowledge your pain, your destruction, your end, and I will help you scatter your ashes into the wind. Death cannot stop us. I have never believed it, but I can promise you I will always acknowledge it. So I will share this small piece. Just let it sink in. I died that day, and the next day, and again, and again. So yes, some of these poems are not exactly, like I said, light reading, but they're important to me. And I think it's important that other people who have experienced it or been through it know that they're not alone working through it. So I'm going to read, this one is called Heart Measurements. This is one of my favorite pieces in the book. So I struggled for a long time with an eating disorder. I still struggle with it from time to time. It's much better than it was, but it was a rough go for a while. I had a really bad body dysmorphia when I felt like my head was disconnected from the rest of me. And when people, like, if you were to ask me to like draw a picture of my body or to draw a picture of myself, I would be so disproportionate that it was rough. And a lot of that stemmed from my childhood and the way that I was treated, and into my young adulthood. And you'll see as we get into this. But when I originally wrote this piece, it was a lot more angry. And it was a completely different name. And so when I wrote this book, I reworked it for this book and named it Heart Measurements. And you'll understand why as we get through it. But it was really important to me because I had healed a lot and had worked on myself a lot in dealing with my eating disorder and dealing with my compulsive issues. So I found that it was easier to talk about, and I wanted to be bolder in how I talked about it. And I wanted to just say exactly what it was that I had going on. So this one's called Heart Measurements. When I was younger, I was taller and stronger than my counterparts. Somehow being stronger translated into larger, but in truth, I was just developing faster. With a tall frame and developed muscles, I was deemed less feminine and more manly, less to be admired or desired and more to be criticized. You are so much bigger than everyone else. And I was. But I never understood why bigger was bad, why my height and strength were considered less feminine, why I was less than compared to my smaller, more feminine friends. Being bigger was a negative. I didn't understand what the adults meant when they sneered it, so I took it to mean that bigger and larger automatically meant fatter. In grade school, I had to sit at the back of the class because I was the tallest. The boys called me freak. I didn't know I made them feel insecure. All I knew is that everyone said I was bigger. My aunt halved my food on every visit, regardless of portion or the size of it, and my stepfather told me I needed to watch my weight so I could someday bear children. I think you can see where this might be going. By teenage years came my developing fears. I came into a body virtually overnight. I was mortified when my mother took me to the store to buy bigger bras and underwear. My friends didn't need to worry about their bodies. They were still so small and petite. I was tall with strong legs and arms with a body of a woman by age 14. This concept of being bigger and larger was a constant reminder that my body was not one to be desired. I look back now and I realize I was healthy and I was perfect, but that teenage girl never knew it. If you know me, you know my story. You know that I have a history of abuse and neglect, of childhood violations, so you can only imagine what happens next. A young girl with a body she can't understand, and a monster with nothing but time and blood on his hands. If I didn't have enough reasons to hate my body before, you can be sure that I had plenty now. Mix this all up and you've got a terrified girl labeled bigger with a body. And the lesson to be learned was that bodies like mine aren't meant to be loved. And if you're bigger than the world, you will be hurt. I became so disassociated from my body. I began to neglect it. I hurt it on purpose, and I became bigger. I became the thing everyone called me. And while the sadness was crushing me, food changed from sustenance to weaponry. When I tell you I step on the scale to weigh my depression, it's not a euphemism or to distract your attention from the idea that I'm bigger. Now, I'm not blaming numbers on my huge history. I know when I should take credit for misery, but I'll be honest, it started in my innocence. It started when I was just a little kid. My body was not created equal. In fact, I don't know a single one that is. So to compare and resize is a travesty in my eyes, because if you're strong and you're healthy, that should be good enough for you. It should be good for everyone else too. The one thing I can say is it's true. I am bigger. But I measure by my heart, not by my hips. I measure by the words that spill from my lips. I measure by the poetry I write with my hands, and I measure with the love that no one else understands. It's taken me 27 years to realize I was bigger in their eyes, but I have grown into my body and into my life, and I must admit, my heart is too large to be measured or defined. Bigger is not always a bad thing. Larger is not always a bad thing. Love is the only thing that makes the body worthy to keep on pumping its beautiful beating heart. And when it comes down to it, there are worse things than being fat. Maybe I've gotten off track, but the message I hope you take from this is to educate your children to be strong and healthy. Teach them that their heart should be the biggest part of their bodies. Make sure they know they can be larger than life, whether they are short or tall, whether they are black or white. Teach them that food is a pleasurable responsibility and that care of their body is a personal priority. And that when they gaze into the mirror, they feel love and beauty, not shame and hate over someone else's unnecessary commentary. There's enough hate in this world to crush them. Don't let the hate begin with you. So we're going to keep going along here. I'm going to skip some of the really sad ones because I don't want to. Okay, this one's called 10 Years. And I wrote this as like a letter to my child. Not that my child will probably ever read my books. In fact, I hope that she doesn't. But this is when I wrote. I was thinking of her when I wrote it. 10 years. 10 years, I tell her. 10 years ago, your mother was just a figure in a nightmare, painted blues and dripping blacks with red stripes across her back, stitches in her mouth to keep from spilling secrets from the shroud she wore across her naked heart, beating frenzied in the dark. Stone cold and solid with a weight around her neck, praying for the end, watching for the end, smoking gun held to her head, eyes closed, wishing she were dead. 10 years is a long time, but sometimes it is still not fine. Still, 10 years is a long time, and sometimes I forget to cry. I sigh and breathe out memories, tangled spiderwebs of lies we weave, decaying husks of anxiety, revived temporarily, and as the dust settles around me, I notice they are words. Without thinking, I begin writing, replacing words like dying with lighter words like trying. I would be lying if I said I understood it all at once. 10 years ago, I was a little girl lost reading and fairy tales, just dreaming that someone would love me, maybe even want me. 10 years ago was a long time, and more I can say it's fine and mean it. There are fewer and fewer secrets when we write freedom and believe it. And maybe someday my pen will run out of ink, and I will not have to think if it has been 10 years or 20. See, if I was smart, I would like pre-plan ahead of time which ones I'm going to read, but I don't, because I am very well organized and put together. Oh, so this is one of my favorite ones. Okay, so besides, I talk a lot about like my trauma and healing stuff like that, but this book is also really important to me because I come out in it. I'm a queer poet. I'm a queer author. I'm a queer person in general. Like it, you don't have to just be one thing, but I would not been out for the bulk of my life. In fact, this year was like the first year that was actually a thing that I decided to do with my life, was to really step into who I was and embrace it. And it was really hard because I grew up in a evangelical fundamentalist home, sort of. And obviously in that environment, they're not supportive of homosexuality or anything of in the spectrum, any part of the community. And so it was something that they tried to kind of beat out of me. Obviously it didn't work because I'm still here. It doesn't work that way. But when I wrote this book, I decided to just write about everything, even if I felt like I wasn't ready at the time, because I knew eventually I would be ready and I didn't want to regret the opportunity that I had. And I wanted to make sure that people who read my book that identify with being queer or being part of the LGBTQ plus community, I wanted them to know that it's okay, and that who they are is valid, and that they don't have to justify their existence, which is what faith and religion made me do for a really long time, was picking apart Bible verses to somehow prove that I deserved to live. So that's in this book too. This one's called Dearly Beloved. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to rend this spirit from this flesh and to lay to rest this wicked sin breeding beneath this skin. Bless this unholy union of water and flame. We call upon the spirits to tame the lust-riddled sickness seducing the bride of Christ. It is with great shame we raise our blades in a bloody sacrifice. Pray, child, open your eyes as we reclaim a body consumed by lies. Much as he maimed me, so did religion, and that was the last time I prayed for redemption. So I talk about a lot of things in this book. I think it's kind of like it's almost a coming of age book, but for adults. Like those of us who never got the chance to really step into who we were. Maybe we had to take care of other people. Maybe we were just in survival mode, whatever was going on at the time, that we didn't really get to experience life. I never did. I never had like teenage, whatever it means to be like a teenager. I don't know what that means because I never had that. I was taking care of my 6 younger siblings and just trying to stay alive. And when I was in college, it was kind of the same thing. I was still very much in survival mode and missed out on a lot of opportunities just because I just didn't know. I didn't know how to socialize with people. I didn't know how to be safe anywhere or at any time. And I definitely did not know who I was. And so I spent a lot of time mimicking other people and trying to blend into different kinds of groups of people because I didn't know how to survive. And I was, 19 and in this big world of people, and I didn't know how to do anything. So it was really hard. And it took me a long time to find myself and figure out who I was. And I'm proud to say that I never stopped trying to find out who I was. I tried different things. I tried, different groups of people to try and fit in. And it never worked out. And the reason why it never worked out is because the space for me just didn't exist, because I had to make it for myself. And I think when we're coming into ourselves and we're trying to figure out who we are, we identify and we rely on our friends so much to help us figure that out. In my case, I didn't have that. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anybody in my life that was pulling for me, so to speak. So it was just kind of bopping around for a while, trying to figure out where I belonged. And then, it just was like, forget it. I'll just make my own space and just try to figure it out from there. And it's kind of funny, when you decide that that's what you're going to do, and you decide you're just going to be who you're going to be, and you don't care, you begin to stop caring what everybody else thinks. The people who are just like you, they find you. And I think that is just really, really cool. And it's scary when you're transitioning and you're trying to figure out who you are and what it is that makes you happy and fulfilled and makes you you. And you sometimes lose people in the process. I have lost family and I have lost friends, and it's not easy. So when I wrote this book, I wanted them to know that if you lost friends or family, that's not on you and that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be the best person that you can be. And the best person you can be is one that's healed and trying to make the best out of bad situations. And sometimes people don't like it when you heal because it's harder for them to take advantage of you. I mean, that certainly happened in my experience. When you start learning how to stand up for yourself and you start learning how to say no, people don't really like that. And if you read my book and you have also been through it, I just want you to know, if you are losing friends or family, I will be your new family. I will be your big sister. I will be your mom. I will be your aunt. I will be the weird witchy woman who lives down the road that makes suspiciously good cookies. But at the end of the day, I just want you to know that you're not alone and it's going to be okay. And I saw a quote on Facebook once, and it was, be the person that you needed when you were younger, and be the person that you needed, basically. And so that's what I wanted to do with this book. I wanted this to be the thing that I would have needed when I was 19 and didn't know any better and didn't have anybody looking out for me. So we're going to keep going. This book is available on Amazon and on Kindle and in all major bookstores. And also you can get signed copies on Curious Corvid. So each signed copy comes with an affirmation, and each one is different. And so they're very special. No one will have the same thing in their book. That was really important to me. To make it just really special for everybody who went to the effort to buy a signed copy. Okay, so this one's kind of sad. So this was so this poem is called Dear Little Raven. And this one is actually based off of a TikTok trend. And my husband would roll his eyes at me because anytime I bring up TikTok, he's just like, oh my God, TikTok. But there was a trend that went around on TikTok for a while, and it was you talking to your younger self. Also, I just realized it depends on what side of TikTok you were on. I'm on the mentally ill side of TikTok and also queer TikTok, if that's not a surprise. So it was traumatized people talking to their younger self and what they would say to their younger selves. So this one's called Dear Little Raven. And so it's a trend, but in poetry, because I'm extra. Dear Little Raven. Do my dreams come true? Yes, but not in the way you think they do. You'll trade your happiness for survival until even breathing becomes a trial, and you'll lie and say that it's okay, even as you walk in numbered days. But my blood, they appreciate me. Oh no, no, they don't, sweet baby. Her eyes are brimmed in liquid sadness. Will he love me? Does that ever happen? I close my eyes and inhale sharply. No, he doesn't love you either. And it will be a long time before it is easier. And you'll be hurt so terribly before you have a chance to be much happier. But I will be happy. Yes, eventually. Will you always defend me? Her words hang in the air expectantly. No, I reply softly. No, instead I treat you horribly. For a long time I will despise you. and I will do everything I can to silence you. I will smother you in scars and screams, and I will pray for your breathing lungs to cease. I won't know how to love you until I meet someone who knows your value, and sometimes I will hurt you on purpose just to pull through. You're going to feel broken and so worthless and so pained, but that's how you discover love and adopt your brand new name. I don't want to live through this, she cries, sobbing loudly in my ear. I know, but I promise it will be worth your tears, because one day you will wake up and find so much fire in your belly. You will find the strength to walk, even as your legs shake and feel like jelly. You'll put down the knife, you'll bandage up your scars, you'll find the wondrous magic of your loving heart. You'll even make it through some therapy. And I promise you, you'll come out okay. You will be loved and you will be happy. I dry my tears and smile softly. I am now loved, I am now happy, and I thank the child that survived inside me. I'm sorry I did not know. I'm sorry I did not love you, but the truth is I did not know how to. But I promise it was never once about you. And the thing I love most about you is the love you gave out so freely, for that is the truest essence of me. And despite all the hurt and harm done to me, no one, no one, no one can ever take this from me. So, welcome to the new people that have arrived. Hello, thank you for popping in. We're reading through some poetry from The Cry of the Ravven, which debuted May 3rd. If you're late, I finally remembered to bring the orange book with me. So this is the orange book that was my first book, I Am Ravven. And then this is what it looks like now. Because I always talk about it in my lives that I do. And I was like, oh, this book was orange. But then I never have it with me to show people. And then this book, The Cry of the Ravven, used to be a book called The Scars on Our Skin. And it was purple. You can't get it anymore. I don't know. It might still show up on Amazon. I'm not sure. But you can't buy it anywhere. So I still have copies of it. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I have copies of both of them. I don't know what I will do with them, but I have them. Okay, this one's called I Am Sick That You Remember. And this is one of my favorite ones in the piece, just because it was kind of like it's a screw you poem. I do have one. I don't know if I don't want to be like offensive to anyone, but I do have a poem in here that's called Fuck You. I'm not going to read that one, but I'm going to read this one. I am sick that you remember. I pause to ponder the words you bring to mind. They would be words like ghastly, terrible, demented, evil, vile, disgusting, despicable, putrid, bile. There is no kindness in my heart for your existence, no forgiveness for this life I've been forced to witness, and I hope that when you finally pass into the next life, the only mourning occurring will be the amount of time you existed to begin with. And if I ever have the displeasure of seeing you again, I will mark your presence as yet another sin. May God have mercy on your soul. So choke on this tasty piece of truth. For me, there will be no redemption for you. There is no love or remembrance of it for you. And I pray to God you die alone in a cell and remember me as a woman who condemns you to hell. So I've read now some pieces from each part of the book. So we're coming to the end, to the last part of the book, which is called Transformation and then the Sun. Okay, so this one's called Nobody. This is a love poem, but not like a stereotypical love poem. So I'm just going to read it because I don't feel like I could explain it better than I could read it. Nobody loves someone the way you love me. What I should say is nobody loves someone like me the way that you do. I have to say it twice because it takes time to sink in. Love was not a prize that came cheap. Love was an endless fight to prove I was good enough, except I was never good enough, and good enough was being Jesus. I've nailed myself to crosses only to come back scared and scarred because I couldn't save the masses and I could not save myself. Jesus is perfect. Jesus is good enough. I can never be Jesus. Therefore, I can never be good enough. Somehow we always seemed to miss the fact that at the end of the day, Jesus is love, and his love is good enough for all of us, for everyone. So if good enough is really love, why wasn't I good enough, and why wasn't I loved? Asking myself these questions brings me to the same conclusion. Because nobody loves someone like me. Not only was love withheld from me, I was persuaded that when someone told me they loved me, it was a lie to abuse me, to use me, and to take everything that they could from me. So in summary, I was not good enough, and love was a lie. I must go back to my original statement. Nobody loves someone like me the way that you do. It took me years to learn that love and abuse were not interchangeable, that love is Jesus and Jesus is perfect, and there is nothing like perfect love. I call you nobody because I was taught you did not exist. So how true it is that nobody loves someone like me the way that you do. You love me like Jesus, so in your eyes, I am good enough and I am loved. I'm sorry, Jesus, but I think I was taught wrong. I am someone, and I am good enough. Nobody loves someone like me the way that you do. Okay. I'm just going to do a couple more because I don't want to drag it out. Also, sorry for shaking my table. I don't mean to. Someday down the line, I'm going to have like a whole setup and it'll be super nice. And I'll have like a really cool gothic-y background or something like that. But for now, you get to look at my bedroom walls. This one's called Self-Portrait. Okay. Eyes that have seen too much and have so much more to see. Wrinkles beneath that support the baggage that was never claimed. Skin that dries in winter and sweats in summer with pores the size of caverns because I never learned the difference between dry and oily, kind of like how I never learned the difference between fine and angry. Shoulders that sport some scarring, a collarbone that used to sport sapphire bruising, arms that have carried worlds and broken hearts and so much emptiness. But that's why I have muscles, to carry both my children. One to whom I said goodbye, and one who makes me feel alive. A chest containing a platinum ribcage to protect a heart that beats beyond its age, a fragile flutter of years. A stomach that's soft from neglect and fears, that's marked with hope in the form of stretch marks that follow the story of my character arcs. A uterus that has known pain and joy and fear, 9 months of it, as it fought to secure a future, hips that can make a man stop, or a woman for that matter, though I always have labeled them bigger and fatter, legs that have walked miles and miles and made miles seem shorter because I grew stronger, feet that have walked on eggshells, until I decided to crush them, until I decided to demolish them. And that's when I started running, building legs that could run so fast and so hard until I was so far, healing a uterus that deserved love and a stomach that could steel itself in the face of anything. A chest that could withstand everything, a heart that could love anyone, arms that could protect anyone, that could hold everything. Powerful arms that could cradle infants or punch with the swings, a collarbone that straightened my shoulders as I straightened my resolve, as I learned how to love, I learned how to perceive, weaving a thicker skin that could still be soft, as my eyes really learned to see a self-portrait. 2 ways I see myself, the half that was broken down and the half that rose back up, and I honestly think it's kind of beautiful. Something that could not be recreated, something so real because I have lived it. a masterpiece, cracks and all, scars and all, a portrait of disaster and success, but mostly of love that made the most of it. And that's how I want to see myself, even if no one else can see it. A body that didn't give up, that will never give up, that will run until the end of it. So, okay. So there's one other piece in here that I really, really love and that is really important to me. But the last time that I tried to read it on a live, I ended up having like an emotional moment. I was like crying while I read it. So I don't know if I should read that piece again because I don't think that anybody wants to see that again. I'll think about it. See. This one's called Burning Quills because birds are on fire in this book. I've been told I have the heart of a poet, with a pen spilling words that consistently shows it, a knack for blending pure hope into fear, a rope at the ledge when the ending is near, a light in the darkness to show you the way, a promise that there will be better days. Sometimes disgustingly optimistic. It's just in my blood. You know I can't help it. I like to believe I write magic from darkness, that I can save the dark ones lost among us. I like to believe I can bring hope to this world, a darkling queen birthed from a scared little girl. I like to believe I'm worth more than my past, that the then and the now is a sharp contrast. But it's hard to believe and it's hard to push on when a voice deep inside screams that I'm wrong. Just a matter of time until everyone knows the thing I'm most good at is just a big show. I dare think I'm someone I'm not even real. How can I speak the truth when I don't know how to feel? I don't belong among true clever creatives. I'm a fraud and a sham and full of self-hatred. Who do I think I am and what have I done? Dreaming big dreams with a heart on the run. Imposter syndrome simmers deep in my mind, leftover trauma from a past far behind, a chaotic battle between who's wrong and right, and just one of the shadows creating my night. I don't write this for pity. I write for awareness, for those who also have thoughts that betray us. Do you think you're nothing, a joke, or a sham? Well, then you'll fit right in, so come take my hand. We mustn't let fear control our potential. It's time to view life from a different angle. So I'll take my pen, and yes, you take yours, and we'll do what we do, weaving our words. In times when I'm overwhelmed by this voice, I'll remember these words amid all the noise. I have been told I have the heart of a poet, with a pen spilling words that consistently shows it. Right, I will read. Let's see. I'm going to read two more. This one's called Here We Are. Not the same as yesterday, won't be the same tomorrow. Stronger than my illnesses, conqueror of sorrow, healer of all brokenness, warrior of pain, carrier of faithfulness, owner of my name. Left the past behind me, my baggage on display. No shame for me to carry as I choose to live today. Champion of broken hearts, mental pain, and fear. Not perfect by a long shot, but confident and real. Don't waste your tears upon me and do not try to give me shame. I may have once been broken, but I will never be again. So the last one I'm going to read for you guys is called Cry of the Corvids. And it's like, I like to think of it as like the theme for Curious Corvid, kind of why I created Curious Corvid to begin with. And so we have a tagline, and the tagline is, my curious Corvid, do you feel out of place in the sun? Well, it came from this poem. So it's like the theme song, but not a song. Cry of the Corvids. You there with the familiar face, you echo lost love and a broken place. Do you look to belong, a haven, a space, to exist and to heal, disappear with no trace? Then come, join my murder and my unkindness. We take the worst of the pain that would bind us and transform it to a beautiful shelter of darkness. And here you can rest and be loved in like-mindedness. Put down the knife, the rope, and the gun, any weapon that renders your dark life undone. You are not alone. You need not live on the run. My curious corvid, do you feel out of place in the sun? We have all been there, and together we thrive. So come, take a step into this, the dark side. You've heard of the shadows on walls intertwined. I send them to stop you on the night you would die. They come up as poetry and birds of jet black. They pull at your heart as you question your act. If someone has lived in spite of all that, then maybe this ending is not where it's at. So come, join my darklings. We promote health and growth. We encourage your life when you need it the most, and you won't feel alone since we live among ghosts. We change the world with kindness and poetical posts. There are gardens to lounge in with moonlight to relax, and don't worry of questions, for we will not ask. I promise there is more to your life than the past. So come, take my hand, embrace life and new paths. So that's my book, The Cry of the Ravven. If you're watching this now or you're watching it later, I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me and listen to me read from my new book. I'm very passionate about it. I'm really, really proud of it. This book was really scary for me to put together and put out because of all of the things I talk about. There are things in this book that I've never talked about before. And once you put it out into the world, you can't take it back. It's always going to be there. And it's a really scary thought sometimes, depending on what we're dealing with. And choosing to acknowledge the things that I have been through and the things that I've experienced, like I said, has caused me to lose people in my life. And I know that there will be more people that I will lose because of this book. But I'm not sorry and I'm not ashamed, because I know that there are so many other people who have experienced what I have or similar to it, and they need someone to remind them that it's going to be okay. And that's what I hope that my book will do. I hope my book will find its way to all of the people that really need it in the long run. So in my first book is dedicated to my husband, Link, obviously, because without him, the first book, it wouldn't exist. None of my writing would exist if it wasn't for him, because he was the one who encouraged me to start writing again to begin with. So the first book is dedicated to him, but the second book is dedicated to a friend of mine. And the reason why it is because I came out to this person during a really difficult part of my life when I was transitioning into who it was that I wanted to be. And it was right around the same time that I was coming out to other people in my life and trying, and not just in being queer, but also in changing kind of my life's directions and starting my business and doing these new things and just switching up what it was that everybody else had expected me to always be or to do. And it did not go well. Not all of the time. It really didn't. And so this person specifically was very kind and compassionate and accepting just immediately off the bat, and continues to be so. And this book is all about transformation and coming into who you are, and the importance and value of having the right people in your inner circle. So that's why this book is dedicated to that person, to my friend instead. So thank you so much for sitting with me this evening. And like I said, both of my books are available on Amazon, on Kindle, and in all major bookstores. I was really excited to see that both of them became #1 bestsellers on Amazon. This one was #1 in women's poetry. This one was #1 in women's poetry and in LGBTQ poetry, which was really cool for me. And it's actually still trending. I'm still currently number 23 in LGBTQ poetry. And that means a lot to me specifically. So if you're out there and you are interested, I have them, and I do have signed copies, and you can get even a special book bundle on the Curious Corvid website that has both of the books included with a special little note from me. yeah, I have lots more work coming. I'm working on a couple other poetry collections. I have my novel coming out at the end of this year. I've started working on the second part. So the Sentimental Dead is a multi-book series. The first one comes out in October. I'm going to be releasing it on my birthday as a special gift to myself. And I'm working on writing the second one, and I'm really excited about it. I've also been really diving into horror and really expanding my the kinds of things I write in the horror category, the horror genre. So I'm really excited about that, and some secret work that I have coming up that I haven't been able to talk about yet. But yeah, it's great, and I'm really excited. And I just appreciate everybody who takes time to listen to me talk and share what it is that I'm doing. And if you're here in the Discord, that means that you're a member of our website and you've joined our Discord to talk with our authors. But if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, that means that you're not a member. You're missing out. It's so easy to join our Discord. So if you want to join our Discord, we have instructions on our Instagram and on the website. But if you're watching this right now, if you go to Discord and you make a free account and then head over to Curious Corvid Publishing, sign in to become a member, it's free. We only send out newsletters when we have free books or really exciting stuff coming on, so we won't spam you. But once you become a member, then you can join our Discord on the Nights with Ebon Pinion page. You have access to our forum and also our authors blog, where they post short stories, poetry, and just general conversations. Amy went on a trip a few weeks ago and she posted about her traveling playlist, and I thought that was really cool. So we have a lot of really cool things coming with Curious Corvid, and I would hate for you to miss out. And more live events with our authors as well that are going to be coming up, some workshops and some classes and just like literally all of the things. So make sure that you're going to be part of it because it's going to be super cool. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Thank you again for hanging out with me. Remember, we may be different species, but we're all part of the same family. So be kind to yourself and be kind to others. And I will see you soon.